Cricket et al. It's a website, it's a podcast.
Pete, it's a way of life. It's Gideon Haig over here.
Peter Lawler over here.
And welcome to Cricket et al., your independent cricket podcast. We're back in something approximating normality, but there's further abnormalities down the road. The IPL has resumed. The Asia Cup is subject to further information from the various protagonists.
Oh, my favourite tournament. Do tell me what. Oh, okay.
All right.
There's a few things going on, isn't there?
There certainly is.
It's been a bit hectic here, Gideon. You see what I've got?
I do, yeah. Great.
Yes, that's my international driver's licence. It's your passport to international pleasure. Because guess what? I'm leaving on Monday.
You're leaving on Monday, yeah.
For the big Cricket et al. Adventure. We're going on the road again.
You thought you were going in 2 weeks, but it's actually on Monday.
Yeah, there was that. There was this horror moment where Sue went, guess what? We're leaving next week, not in a fortnight. And we just both looked at each other and we've been in a state of panic ever since.
Okay, all right.
Well, but we're getting things done.
You'll get it done.
I've got the driver's licence, so I'll be able to pick you up from Mike Atherton's place in London for our drive up to Cricket et al. Where is it? Sorry, Etal, the village.
Yeah, Etal or Etal. Anyway, as far as we're concerned, it's et al. It's Britain's smallest village. Highly suitable for the world's smallest cricket podcast.
But hasn't it got Britain's largest thatch-roofed pub? Every village has got some shit
it's like a veritable TARDIS, isn't it? There's just so much packed into this tiny little space. Very much like Cricket et al.
So I've got a bit like the Australian selectors prepare for the Test Match Championship and then the West Indies, which I know that George Bailey says are different and will be treated differently to some degree when it comes to picking teams. Now, I don't know if that's around conditions or the Constance's maturity. Perhaps he turns 19 in that time. Or how old is he? God knows what. Did you see? You probably didn't see that. That's kind of interesting Test match stuff at the top that happened last week where they announced the squads. I think we mentioned that.
Yeah, we did,
We didn't. There was one thing that we didn't discuss, and it was George's attitude to who opens.
Yes.
Now I'm trying to find the quote here. Hang on, because I'm trying to be prepared. Basically,
I think we remarked, didn't we, in the podcast that we didn't think it would resolve anything, that everyone would get picked. It's a 16-person squad for one game, so they're obviously preserving all their various options. But what did George say?
Well, what George did say, he said obviously there's still plenty of cricket to work through, and on that note, I'll get back to that. He says, I do think opening's a role that more people could do than we give credit to. I know there's a prevailing thought that it is a specialised role, and that's one that you stick to some degree, Gideon. But I think in certain conditions, there are opportunities in different times where other guys could do it. So I think they're really tossing that up. And they're saying Constance isn't the finished product, and Marnus could open.
Well, we did see Travis Head deployed in India in 2023 when they needed a left-hander at the top of the order, and they needed to make hay against the harder ball. That was understandable.
Ditto Sri Lanka. Changed up for that. I don't know that you change up necessarily for Lords. How do you prepare for Lords? What sort of batter prospers at Lords, kids?
Maybe you go on practice pitches with a slight camber from one side to the other.
I thought it always thought it'd be handy, at least at one end of Lords, to have one leg shorter than the other. Sue's hairdresser has one leg shorter than the other, which is a concern. I was always advised as a boy, never go to a barber with that predisposition. Cameron Green's doing well. I expect to see him in that Test team. He's made a second century from about 6 innings playing for Gloucester, isn't it?
Yes, and they want him to bat at 4, don't they? Which gives an indication that Smith will probably move to 3, and the competition will be between Labuschagne and Constance for Khawaja's opening partner.
Harry went over there. Marnus Labuschagne went over and is trying to get a few games in. His first one hasn't gone well. He made zipping 4 in his first game. Marcus Harris is actually doing quite well over there and has taken over captaincy.
The possibility of him making 1,000 runs in May. Now, I haven't heard that record mentioned in dispatches for a very long time. Of course, W.G. Grace, I think, was the very first player to do it. I think Glenn Turner did it in the 1970s. Wally Hammond and Donald Bradman, I think, as well.
Who was the last player to do it, Gid? Was it Gadding?
I think you might be right, actually. Yeah. But I mean, look, it depends on the amount of first-class cricket that they squeeze into, and they're constantly tampering with the schedule. So now there's a glut of 4-day cricket in that calendar month. But it's still a remarkable achievement if he does make it.
Yeah. Good luck to him. But it indicates too that it's good batting in England this year.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what that means for the Test Match Championship, and more so for India, who are heading over there for a 5-match series. You noticed the breaking news overnight from that McCullum has sort of suggested that the English could be a bit more humble in their approach to Test cricket.
Well, welcome to the show, Baz. I mean, a few of us have been saying this for a little bit of a while, that maybe, as Baz was saying last night, that the team has got out of touch with the general population, and that they're looking at where they've come from, what they've achieved, the opportunities they've let slip, and what we've done for the people that this team represents. Curious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is curious, because this is the same team. I don't know if you watched the Ashes documentary. Ben Stokes said at the end of that, we've managed to become a sports team that will live forever in the minds of people who are lucky enough to see us play.
Hard to imagine that that's out of touch with the general population, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure that... So I'm always told by Sue to clean my glasses before the podcast. Most people just listen, Sue. What was I going to say about that? I'm a bit disappointed they've only gone for humility. I think elite humility might be needed in a situation like this.
Elite coherence.
Coherence. We don't expect coherence from cricketers, do we, Gideon?
Yeah, no, I was taken with one line of Baz's, which is they're in reference to some of the absurd things that the team has rolled out at their various press conferences. They're trained cricketers, not trained media folk. These guys work unbelievably hard playing 36 holes. They sacrifice so much.
That's like a pornographic challenge. This is this golfing. Yeah, people are getting themselves in a state about the golf. Well, look, one very positive thing that I see happening in England is that they're about to play Zimbabwe in a 4-day Test match. We can only applaud that, can't we?
Yes, we can. I mean, Australia hasn't done much for Zimbabwe cricket over the journey, and it's good to see Zimbabwe being hosted. They've actually got a pretty full year of Test cricket this year.
Yeah, but Sam Constas wasn't born last time Australia played Zimbabwe in a Test match. Seriously, it was 2003, wasn't it?
I think nothing that the England team does these days is not calculated. I cannot imagine that this has not been extensively workshopped in advance. They maybe even have done some focus groups about the perception of the team over the last 6 to 12 months. And I think the thing that has stuck in people's craws is that we've moved on from the idea that what's important is the way that we play the game to this idea that the result doesn't matter at all and we don't really care. And at the point where it's perceived that you don't really care, that's when you really do lose a bit of touch with your public, in the sense that if you don't think that the result matters, then why should we? I can't imagine an Australian team saying the same thing. Not that Australia is the benchmark of anything at all, but it would seem a kind of a reductio ad absurdum of the English approach.
At least once in the last 3 series, they have completely dropped the ball in a Test match, and that really needs to be addressed, doesn't it? That's not respecting the game, I think, and that's something they really sort of need to get their heads around.
Particularly when you present yourself as the saviour of the game. I think I wrote back in 2023 that England would be so much more easy to appreciate if they didn't expect a standing ovation every time they walked in the room.
Yeah, it was a good line, Gideon. We should
Yeah.
maybe we'll do that as a T-shirt for the next Ashes series.
Well, look, they are coming into the Ashes, of course. So naturally, I think fans will rally behind them. Naturally, I think even Australian fans will want to see them acquit themselves, do well in Australia. But they have to be worthy of that support.
Yeah. And before they play the Ashes, they've got not a Border Gavaskar, sorry, whatever their version of that is.
The Pataudi Trophy, yeah.
Is it the Pataudi Trophy?
Yeah.
Hey, before I move off from Zimbabwe, there was a very nice piece by Firdaus an interesting piece by Firdaus on Cricket Info. I'll read you the stat, the intro. In 2025, New Zealand, Sri Lanka and Pakistan will play 5 tests each. Bangladesh, 6. West Indies, 7. South Africa, 8. India and England, 10 each. And Australia, 11 tests. The only other nation to play that many tests was Zimbabwe. They're going to play 11 tests this year. Yeah, like that's really interesting.
They've got a full, rich year. There's a bit of catch-up going on, and they've played good cricket over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I think I like this Tavengwa Mukalani, the Zimbabwe cricket chairman.
Yes.
He's really put his shoulder to the wheel on this. And they're not even in the Test Match Championship, are they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yep.
So,
and, of course, they've got Blessing. The wonderful Blessing at 6'6", very tasty too. Of course, we'll probably never end up seeing him in Australia, but he's been maybe the outstanding Test pace bowler apart from Bumrah and Cummins over the last year.
So I think that Test they haven't actually loaded it up with their big guns. They're a little undermanned. I think Bethel's still at the IPL, isn't he? And which is interesting. South Africa are pulling their players out of the IPL. A little early, aren't they? But it's sort of a token gesture.
Meanwhile, in the IPL, Pete.
Is this sound the segue
klaxon? Yeah.
Gideon. What is going on? Suryavanshi made a half century overnight. We like this because we like the feats of young people, don't we? What is he? He's 4. And he's 4. Yeah. He was playing in a match against CSK, which features MS Dhoni, who's 143 years old. And who is learning the truth of that of what Peter Costa told me when I joined the Herald and Weekly Times back in 1872. Yeah. He said, "Journalism, Peter, it's a young man's sandpit and it's an old man's quicksand." And I'm up to fucking here. And I'd suggest, MS, that you are up to fucking there as well. I can't. Well, do you reckon he's going to go round again?
I watched him toss last night.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've noticed this recently, but I swear, is he dyeing his hair? Because I'd always thought that I quite liked those distinguished streaks of grey in the beard and the bonnet.
Too. Yeah.
But maybe it's just because I haven't been observing him without the helmet or the cap off so far. But I swear, he's gone, as Steve Bernard used to say, he's gone prematurely black.
Which happened to Damien Fleming.
Indeed.
Didn't it?
Jason Gillespie.
Gillespie. They both used to share the same hair dye while on tour. Well, I didn't get the memo because I've been dyeing my beard grey because MS was doing it. Thought, chicks dig it, man. Come on. He, but I mean, incredible career, but it does look like it's petering out.
The rumours around a couple of weeks ago, weren't they? When his parents came to watch the Delhi Capitals game.
Yeah.
Stephen Fleming said at a press conference that he didn't think that that Dhoni could bat for 10 overs, running full stick.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have a look at his. He's gone okay this year for statistically, but his strike rate is 135. He's faced 145 balls and hit 12 of them for 6. And kind of batting where he does, I think you'd expect a bit more acceleration. You know, Andre Russell, who's getting on in years, he's faced 101 balls and hit 14 of them for 6. And then you look at someone like Puran, who's faced 230 balls and hit 35 of them for 6. So
you know your IPL stats, don't you, Gideon? They just come off the top of your head.
It's amazing. It just came from nowhere.
I also know that Janine's driving down the Great Ocean Road, you're just consuming stats, are you? Yeah. Entertaining her with your knowledge of the IPL.
But I think, as you say, you know, his vibe of Suryavanshi, he's 14 years old, he's smashing CSK everywhere. I think Ayush Mitra, he's 17. He was opening for CSK last night. He looks a good player. He can hit the ball hard. It's pretty clear that CSK need to re-engineer in a fundamental way. They've always, they've won 5 trophies. They've made it to playoffs 12 times, but something really needs to shift. Something big needs to shift. And the logical thing is for the biggest thing of all to shift.
Gee, it's been a hard couple of weeks for Indian cricket fans. Rohit, Virat, MS Dhoni. Dear God.
Yeah.
Another player that's interesting me over there, because I'm getting some strange messages in the middle of the night, Gideon. Rishabh Pant, he's not going very well, is he? No. And there's even been some talk that he might be in the running to replace Rohit as a captain. Yeah. Given his form in the IPL, I'd be surprised that they'd do that. I think he's made 150 in 11 innings, isn't he? He's averaging about 12. He's looked terrible. He's barely put a run together, and looks worse because he is the captain and because he is the highest paid player ever to take the field in the IPL, at least as far as we know.
And also because of the way that he plays. He's got a little bit of the baseball problem, doesn't he? Yeah. There is the suspicion sometimes with his eccentric ways of getting out that he doesn't quite care, which I'm sure he does. In fact, I suspect it's probably the opposite is true, that he cares so damn much. I always remember being told by one of his coaches that Pant, if he failed, absolutely flogged himself on the training track. Was absolutely crazy. Trained himself into the ground, and you had to watch these peaks and troughs with Pant, because when he was on fire, he was he was carried along by his own momentum. But when he was stopped for any length of time, he almost began to dig himself his own hole.
Yeah. So it hasn't been a happy time for the Lucknow Super Monarch Kings 11 Giants. Yes. And it hasn't been a happy time all up. There's rumours out there that Goenka, is that how I pronounce his name? Sanjeev Goenka, who is very close to Zaheer Khan, who's the cricket manager or someone like that, will probably move on Justin Langer. I mean, nothing's surer than the sun setting tonight, and Justin probably not returning to that franchise. I'd suggest after a year like that, I mean, these guys move quickly. And when you've had a situation where your captain's not firing and you're not getting the results, and Zaheer Khan's sitting around doing what Zaheer Khan's been doing, that's I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Well, I reckon I am sure it's not going to play out well for JL, and I reckon he's going to end up a little bit sort of scapegoated for what happens there.
Look, if they can move,
I can't see anyone else being scapegoated for it.
Everyone gets scapegoated eventually. Even Ricky Ponting got scapegoated, didn't he? And I dare say, Fleming's probably under some pressure at CSK as well. It's probably easier to fiddle with the coaching staff than it is the senior players.
Yeah, well, that happens in English football or European football or whatever you call that game where they don't pick it up.
Yeah, so much brand value is embedded in the players. It's easier to fiddle at the margins.
I'm going. We sort of. They did get the IPL back on while you were meandering down the Great Ocean Road. I don't know if you noticed that. That's quite the achievement. PSL and IPL. I think they both started around the same day, didn't they? It was a matter of national pride.
It's staggering, isn't it?
Fronts.
It's tomorrow is a month since Pahalgam, and we've been through every possible sort of geopolitical contortion in that part of the world. But both tournaments have managed to resume. The majority of the participants have returned. I mean, it was 26 civilians were killed in that attack in Jammu and Kashmir, and you can imagine if something like happened in Australia, I think we'd still be reeling. But
it's a great point. It's a great point. They've dusted themselves off, haven't they? Both sides have dusted themselves off and got on with it in some ways.
Interestingly, both tournaments have invoked the national security in their recommitment. I think that the PSL is talking about acknowledgements to valiant heroes of the Pakistan Air Force.
Yeah.
The BCCI, if you had a look at the site screens last night, they were extensive tributes to the Indian Defence Forces. And as you were pointing out in your post the other day, Pete, I have actually read it. I have actually been catching up with things. Pat Cummins was an interesting recruit to patriotic effusions by the tournament on his Instagram.
Yeah, well, I didn't really pick Pat as a sort of guy who was in the cadets at school, but the guy I was listening to the Great Cricketer and sort of being alerted to this. He put obviously a post about his franchise up there, and which he's the captain of, and has returned to international duties, I guess. And a billion hearts unite again, this time with gratitude. Thank you, Indian Armed Forces, for inspiring us with your bravery, which is a perfectly valid sentiment, one would assume, for Indians who've been through that situation. But perhaps the Australians who are in that situation felt equally protected by the Indian Armed Forces. But, geez, you take the money, you play what you're told to play, don't you? Who pays the piper?
Well, I guess, in something like that, you're conspicuous more by your absence than your presence. I mean, he kind of blends into that face, that collection of faces of the various IPL captains. If he was to stand out of it for whatever reason, there will be a lot of questions asked. I mean, I think that probably contractually he has to participate in IPL promotions. He licenses his image rights to his franchise and to the tournament. I wouldn't have thought that there was an awful lot of wriggle room for him.
No, it's just an interesting situation, isn't it, to have a foreigner calling,
Well, of course, the figure who's been most interesting in their response to Pahalgam is the chairman of the ICC.
Who's that again?
Jay Shah.
He was a guy at the BCCI about a month ago. Yeah.
Come on, catch up.
Good old Jay.
He was wont to inform us on his Instagram, our armed forces are our pride, and no words are enough to express their valour and commitment to protecting our motherland and people. We salute our brave men and women in the armed forces who are, etc., etc. Let us unite to honour our heroes and build a stronger, more united India. Now,
that's fair enough, though. I mean, you can't. I can't object to that sentiment from an Indian.
But is he an Indian here? I mean, isn't he the chairman of a multilateral organisation?
Has he done this as ICC chairman? Yeah.
Well, who knows? Obviously, he is ICC chairman whether or not he wants to be, and he is the son of the Home Minister whether he wants to be or not.
Yeah.
It struck me as unguarded and perhaps naive at best to have stood up and spouted nationalist propaganda in that way when he's in the position that he is.
While we're talking about Pat Cummins, we've just assumed that everybody knows who's there and who isn't there. But not everybody from Australia returned to the IPL. Mitchell Starc and Jake Fraser-McGurk decided that that's enough. That experience up there in Dharamshala was enough for them. And look, there's estimates that it's going to cost about that's about $500,000 that Mitchell Starc is leaving on the table. But Mitchell Starc is the kind of guy who I think would leave $500,000 on the table. He is the kind of guy who, for many, many, many years, has prioritised the lesser paying Australian duties over the IPL. And he was, interestingly enough, was the guy who really fronted up for duty last year for the national team, didn't he, when the others didn't as much. So he didn't go back. Jake Fraser-McGurk was particularly affected by the evacuation.
Yes.
Stoinis, Hardy, Stoinis and a couple of the West Australians were of a similar mind. And I note that he and two others delayed their return until they saw that the tournament was happening safely. That's probably the sensible option to take. But good on them. And look, good on the PSL and good on the IPL for dusting themselves off and getting on with this. And well, I guess I couldn't see it happening with the BBL, mate. He'd just been invited. I think we'd all still be under the beds, frankly.
I think if one came back, the other had to. So they weren't going to be the one that did not continue. The challenge was on. And now the further challenge is to Indo-Pakistan cricket relations, isn't it? Because
this is the fallout bit.
There have been reports in India today that the BCCI has given indications that it will not participate in the Asia Cup in September, which is under the auspices of the Asia Cricket Council, which is chaired by Mohsin Naqvi, the PCB head, who is also the Pakistani Home Minister. Cricinfo has a quote from the BCCI secretary, now that the matter has not yet been discussed, but clearly I think that early report was a bit of a trial balloon, wasn't it? That even though there had been precautions already taken, I think the Asia Cup was going to be held in neutral territory. I think it was the India-Pakistan games, at least, were going to be held in either Sri Lanka or the UAE to ensure that they went ahead. There were plans for 2 India-Pakistan games to maximise the potential revenue. Well, I reckon it's very long odds that those games are going to take place now. They were both drawn in the same group. And on that basis, Sony bought the rights for $170 million. The tournament was granted a 19-day window, but I think it has been reported that if the tournament does not go ahead, the financial loss would fall on the PCB. So an interesting way for the BCCI to economically retaliate against its nemesis by standing out of that tournament.
Interesting that you frame it that the PSL is the BCCI's nemesis. And the PCB cannot afford those sorts of things. One would assume that they've taken a lot of economic hits over the years, haven't they, with the inability to host cricket-playing nations. And let's wait and see what impact this has on people's willingness to tour Pakistan. One assumes that it should have none, because if you're going to return to India and play, you return to Pakistan and play. But it's never been a level playing field.
No. I noticed the ICC's now scheduled its AGM for 17 to 20 July in Singapore, and I suspect that India and Pakistan will absolutely dominate that. Once again, we're very heavily leveraged to geopolitical currents that are larger than cricket itself.
Which is difficult for us because in the words soon to become famous from that influencer, Theo Von, we're not geologists. As he hesitantly entered the Middle East debate, he announced that he wasn't a geologist. His sentiments were good, but his choice of words was perhaps akin to some of mine at times.
Well, should we take a break on Cricket et al. and come back in a moment?
Where are we going to go?
Got no idea. Have to find out.
Okay. Gideon, I'm leaving for the UK on Monday for our Cricket et al. Adventure. I need to know how to download the Saily app.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Pete, because on Friday, Janine's daughter, Lena, was leaving for overseas. And, it was just a few hours before she got on the plane. She was thinking, I've got to do something about an eSIM. And I said, I can help. Because Saily is a new eSIM service app brought to you by Nord Security. And fair dinkum, it just tumbled out. I said, you can choose from several affordable eSIM plans in over 150 countries. With a Saily eSIM, you'll always have a connection when needed. And she goes, tell me more. So I said, if you've ever been lost abroad or badly in an internet connection with no Wi-Fi spot in sight, you'll understand what a difference a local SIM card can make. And she said, this sounds like you've said this before. It sounds remarkably rehearsed. I said, no. An eSIM provides an internet connection whenever you travel and saves you money on roaming fees. This is true. Absolutely true.
It's true. You've got a sale.
So I said, look, we've even got a discount on this. You won't get a better offer. Just go to
I know a guy.
Just go to saily.com/cricket et al. and you'll get a 15% discount on this eSIM. And she
Tell
said,
him you know Gid.
She said, are you kidding? I said, no. True as I stand here. So she gets on her phone and she downloads the app, and it's as sweet as pie. And she said, I've done it. I said, did you use the discount? She said, no. I said, what? What have you done? What have you done? That was a kickback for us. Anyway, look.
Damn, that was, yeah.
Yeah. But look, it's awesome. It's awesome. And we checked in with her the other night, and it works.
Of course it
actually works.
Well, you only have to download it once.
You only have to download it once.
Time. You don't have to wait in line at an airport. She didn't have to wait, did she? No.
That's right. No,
she avoided scams.
Yes, you minimise your roaming fees.
So even if she didn't get a discount, she's saving money.
Exactly.
Yes.
And she said, clutch move, Gid, clutch move. I'd never heard that expression before, but I like it.
Yeah.
So if you're in the market for an eSIM clutch move, get on board with Saily.com/cricket et al.
It's almost like you've turned into Justin Langer. I've never heard you so enthusiastic about something.
I can't believe all my worlds were colliding.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's all happening. Well, I'm going to do it too, but hopefully I'll get the 15% discount.
Okay, and I've got to do it too when I go over, so I might get it myself.
Yeah.
We're back on Cricket et al. Pete, you've been very busy up in Sydney in the last little while.
Does it look like that? Really?
It does, actually, yeah. That was a very moving piece that you filed the other day. Tell us a little bit about your meeting with your new best friends,
Pete, making friends.
Blacksmith and Kappa.
It's one of the great privileges of journalism, isn't it? That you can see something that interests you and put your arms around it, and be allowed in. Be allowed in. You're not just a nosy Parker for some reason. If you've got a pen and a notepad, or an iPhone, and an Otter recording app, people will indulge you. So I told everyone the other night about going down to that Bluesberries concert with Dennis Lilly. The highlight of should have been the highlight of my life. One of the things that I took away from that. Sorry, it's very Norm Macdonald, isn't it? His greatest moment of my life was when I had my first child. Then I tried crack. Anyway, it's a diversion. When I was there, there were two guys there who just caught my eye in the room. And one of them, because he had these big, broad shoulders. And then I looked down and noticed he had broad shoulders and no legs. He was standing on two impressive artificial legs. And the other guy with him, his injuries weren't as apparent, but he was clearly injured too. Now, these are guys called, we'll call them Blacksmith and Nazar from Ukraine. They're Ukrainian soldiers who were both suffered horrific injuries last year in the war. Blacksmith, who is actually a blacksmith in civilian life and a very interesting character, had both of his legs blown off. You can read the description if you want to, but he describes the confusion of being thrown sideways into the back of a ute to evacuate the battle and thinking, how come I fit sideways into this van? Normally I'd be lengthways. Normally I'd need to be lengthways. And the reason was his legs were gone, or most of them were gone. He was operated on in Ukraine, and then heard that there is an issue if you're an amputee above the knees that with artificial limbs that it doesn't work that well, and you eventually end up in a wheelchair unless you do this process that I don't know that it was pioneered out here, but the Australians specialise in it. It's called osseointegration, where you basically, it's like screwing attachments into the bone, into the femurs, what was left of the femurs. The other guy, Nazar, he had his left leg really badly injured during the thing and lost 4 centimetres in the length of that leg from the operations. In Australia, they regrew bone, and now his legs are equal length. And I met them down at Circular Quay. It's a profound thing to meet people in your day-to-day life who are just living almost on another planet to you, whose experiences set them so far apart from you. You can ask them questions about it and sort of probe it hesitantly, but you can never quite understand it. And it was interesting to see the bonds between these two. I mean, Victor's 29, Nazar's 21. It's sort of an older brother, younger brother relationship. And we were talking mostly through an interpreter. But it was fascinating. As you say, new best friends. It's Victor's 30th birthday today. So I'm meeting him and Nazo and a few other Ukrainians at the Kiev Social Club in Sydney, which is a restaurant.
Yep.
Very good restaurant connected to the Colombo Social Club and the Kolkata Social Club. So we're going to celebrate his birthday down there. Anyway, if you do go on to the et al. Site, have a look down the bottom, because there is fundraisers to help these two guys through what they've been through. It's cost about $300,000 to fly them out here and to do these operations. Victor's been flown out twice. The first time to have the amputations cleaned up. The second time to have this osseointegration process. He stood up the day after they attached his new limbs. The surgeons say they have never, ever seen anybody do that. They are very brave guys. Obviously, you have to be pretty brave to be a soldier, and they've been through a lot, but they're very impressive people too. And they're determined to get back there and do what they can. Terrible situation for the Ukrainians. I don't think any of it. Anyway, there's that, Gideon. That was my experience. But you have been down the Great Ocean Road.
Well, I have. I just sound the Segway klaxon again, just to update people on our other charitable cause on Cricket et al. Our friend Mustafa Qamari. People were kind enough to contribute at a Cricket et al. Function to him lodging an application for asylum status for his wife Zakira, who'd been through a lot of hoops. It's a very, very detailed and convoluted process, a very, very expensive process, but we finally got it in. And no sooner had we done so than the family, there's also Mustafa's brother Baytullah and his sister Hamida, it became impossible for them to stay in Tehran. Because their visas had expired, and they were unable to renew these tourist visas that they'd been renewing over and over again. So they have now just applied for visas in Pakistan. So they've just moved to Islamabad, one step ahead of the customs official. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Zakira in for biometric testing at the High Commission in Islamabad. But honestly, this is the very, very precarious way that refugees lead their lives. Hopping from one lily pad to another, waiting on the indulgence of the Australian government. Mustafa came here in 2021. He's been trying to get his family here since then. At Cricket et al., we're dedicated to trying to expedite this process, but it's expensive and it's extended and it's very, very taxing of our patience and our good nature. But I just thought I'd bring everyone up to date on that story. It continues.
Need to do another fundraiser, do we?
Well, I tell you what, it's exhaustive. If you're worried about people getting into Australia too easily, your fears are at an end. We're letting them in one by one with a very, very extensive once or twice over.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the two boys I was talking about, there's only been 3 Ukrainians actually come out here for treatment. You might think there would be more of that.
Yeah.
But that's what's happened. Yeah, I was going to suggest we do a fundraiser for them. Bloody hell, kid.
Yeah. But fortunately, they do have the backing of the Bluesberries, Pete.
They do have
Ukrainian
John
friends.
McMurtry's Bluesberries and Dan Fallon and those guys who've recorded a song with the Mariupol Orchestra. Check out the Bluesberries. Anyway, you can... Maybe if you can find it in your heart, tip some money in, particularly as it's Victor's 30th birthday. It's his first birthday outside of Ukraine. In fact, flying to Australia was the first time either of them had ever been on a plane. Wow. And it's also his first birthday without legs. So it's interesting. But hey, he's a bloke, not a hint of self-pity from either of them. No. Really interesting. Not a hint of trauma either, which was interesting.
Yeah. I suppose if you've got other things to worry about to take your mind off your own experiences, there's a motherland to defend from the depredations of the Russians and the delinquency of the Americans. So. Yes, I have been down the Great Ocean Road, Pete. I've filed two exhaustive illustrated posts on my last 4 or 5 days. I won't go into it here. If you're
fantastic, you have become like the guy. That guy wants you to come around and see his slideshow. Right? You've now got the Cricket et al. Subscribers, and they're locked to their seat, and they're going to watch your bloody slideshow of your holidays. No, the next one. Hey, wouldn't it be great if you could get your Cricket et al. Email arriving in a microwave?
This is amazing. Wait till you've seen the letterboxes of Timboon. We stayed for a couple of nights in Timboon, a very sleepy little hamlet in Western Victoria.
Yeah.
And it's famous for various things. It's got extensive dairy country around there. It's got a terrific little distillery. It's got a really great Thai restaurant. But come for the shipwrecks, stay for the letterboxes. Honestly, there is the makings of a great letterboxes of Timboon calendar here.
Is there really?
I drove Janine crazy as we traversed Timboon back and forth looking for, stop, there's another great one.
How many photographs of letterboxes have you got in that bloody post?
We only chose the best.
You broke Substack.
I broke it.
And I've just broken the microphone. You had to move it into two posts.
Yeah. So Cricket et al. Look for Mariners and Mailboxes, parts 1 and part 2, which I filed this morning. It's
fantastic.
Beautiful.
I love it. It's a really good post, and they're good photos.
Yeah, thanks.
And whoever thought that Gideon Haigh would conclude a post with a picture of a rainbow?
I know.
It's just so unnew.
Okay, that's all we've got time for on Cricket et al. Check out cricketetal.com, the Substack experience, and continue to follow us at YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me.
And it's good night from him. You did a promotion then.
I know.
A little plug.